Hi, my name is Madilyn Martone, and for my senior project, I conducted a longitudinal study on abiotic factors in Richardson's Pond. So how I came up with my project is that data collection and research has always been something that I've been really interested in, and I also had an interest in researching climate change. Things regarding the environment and just like things like that in general have always been interesting to me, and I felt that me being a STEAM scholar, I had to do something that was STEAM related, so I thought this was the perfect opportunity to do some sort of research and data collection and analysis with my project. So my mentor is Matthew Donovan. He's a municipal water operator at the Medfield DPW. He's a good family friend, and the reason I chose him as my mentor is I've kind of talked to him a couple times before this project about his job, and I thought it was really interesting. And this is just a screenshot of like one of the times that we came into contact. He always responded to me within a couple of hours with questions for my mentor reports and everything like that. So he just had a lot of information for me with questions and a lot of great insight on like data collection and analysis, specifically like water collection and stuff. So for a brief timeline, I wanted to include this because my project is very time-based and structured-based. So beginning in August, I began creating the protocol that I have for data collection. This was when I had my final meeting with my STEAM mentors, and we kind of finalized the idea for my project. So creating a how, why, when, where. I'm going to be doing all of my analysis and data collection. So like this was like kind of a starting point. And going into September, into the school year, acquiring the tools that I used and finishing my protocol, one of my STEAM advisors, Ms. Sheeny, actually gave me all of the tools that I needed and all of the things that I ended up using for my research. So just like finishing up how I was going to be exactly doing my research and my collection and everything. And then going November to April, I did weekly testing here at the pond, which gave me 20 weeks total of research. And then over here, I just have a little aerial view of the pond, and that little red dot over there is kind of where exactly I collected my data on the walking trail. This kind of gives you a good gauge of where that parking area is, where that walking trail goes, and where exactly I did my collection. So for my protocol materials, I ended up testing every Wednesday. I would go anywhere between mid-morning and right after school. With service learning, I was able to go, get it done earlier in the morning. And I used a Google Sheet as a way to collect my data. That's where I kept all of my research. I went through a couple of variants of this. I had a Google form, which would then go to a Google Sheet, but I found it was easier just to put everything into the Google Sheet. And then I did multivariable testing with these testing strips that you see over here, kind of going, I believe, left to right. I had pH, NO2 or nitrates, NO3, or sorry, nitrites, NO3 which is nitrates, GH general hardness, and KH which is carbonate hardness. So just a little overview of why I chose these and why we use these. pH or power of hydrogen is basically how basic or acidic your water is. An average for this, by the way, all of the research I did was based on fresh water, which is what I conducted my research on, which was freshwater. So all of this is based on freshwater, all the research I did with that. So power of hydrogen, how basic or acidic your water is. Your neutrals are anywhere from 6.5 to 8 ppm or parts per million, averaging at 7 ppm, which is what I ended up getting. NO2, which is nitrites, diatomic ions, used mostly in chemical and pharmaceutical instances, mostly more like pharmaceutical and like humanitarian ways, which, so I did a lot of research on this. Don't really know exactly where this would fall under for my project. I could not find a lot of that, so I collected this, but yeah, nitrates is what I'm more focused on, or NO3, which are polyatomic ions. These are more chemical instances, but more used in fertilizers and pesticides, things like that. That is more of what I would find in my research, because again, that's more like environmentally used and things like that. General hardness is, most people would know it as how soft or how hard your water is. So that's a very big varying scale. Water can go anywhere from soft to hard. There's no general average for what it should be. And I'll get into all of my averages later on. And carbonate hardness is measuring calcium and magnesium in water. Carbonate hardness is a factor that influences pH. So basically, something you would look at is if your pH is swaying, your carbonate hardness would also possibly be swaying. So if your carbonate hardness is too high or too low, your pH would probably swing too high or too low as well. So these are my final results, all the 20 weeks that I had. So you can kind of see a slight variation in my data. The first 10 weeks, I kind of was just doing the date, the time, weather forecast, and then the data that I collected. So this was running smoothly, and I really wasn't finding a lot of trends in my data. Everything was coming back pretty much the same, so I wasn't sure much to base the rest of my project on, because my final project is, again, kind of forming a hypothesis and going through this whole project process as a whole. I wasn't really going through anything, but then I did a mid-year kind of report back to my STEAM cohort, and one of my advisors, Ms. Copese, actually recommended that I start collecting the weather 3 days before and the day of to see if there was possibly any correlation between this. So you can see here the first 10 weeks, I don't really have anything over here because I did not collect that data. But then down here for the second 10 weeks, I did, along with everything else that I'd already been collecting. So just overall, this is just a general view of everything that I collected. And I found that in my second 10 weeks, I found a very interesting trend in my general hardness levels. As you can see, I started off with only really getting a 0 ppm for my general hardness, only getting 30 a couple times, but then my second 10 weeks, I was consistently getting 30, which I thought was interesting, and it was the most significant kind of trend and result coming from my full set of data. So with this, I wanted to kind of look into this more, so I made a graph based on my GH levels in ppm versus the day. And the reason I did this was because I was finding that here you can see in bold, these are all days highlighted in bold that had precipitation at least 3 days prior to my collection of the data. And I thought this was really interesting because this shows actually 4/5 of the time that I collected my data, and there was precipitation at least 2 to 3 days before my actual collection day, that my GH levels rose up to 30. So I found that this was very significant in the fact of there are multiple variables that could go into this, such as water runoff, or this was around the time that the pond did actually freeze up, and so the water was a lot more stagnant than it usually would be. So I found this interesting in that it's something that could be a testable question. So for my final hypothesis, I created precipitation causes an increase in general hardness levels in Richardson's Pond. I went with this because, again, this was really the big jump in my data that I found, and I wasn't really finding anything else changing all that much besides this, and I thought that this was very interesting because of this, and that there was a lot of variables that could go into this, and it's something that could be further tested. So just a conclusion and my vision of a graduate, I learned a lot about data analysis and how to create my own data collection-based study. So kind of going through my kind of own way of the scientific process, I kind of skipped around a little bit. I didn't have an actual testable question or hypothesis going into it. I went more in wanting to do the research and the collecting and having my own form of research and my own form of analyzing data. So I felt that I've learned a lot in doing this as a whole. And then this also goes into the vision of a graduate in the critical thinking aspect, analyzing complex information and evaluating arguments, assessing credibility, reliability, and bias, and considering alternate viewpoints. So I feel that for my project also as a whole, you have to be looking at it a lot more objectively, in the sense that I am a STEAM scholar, and so our projects are more science-based, and in my research, it's a lot of facts rather than like subjective opinions. And looking at this and just like reliability, credibility, and considering like objectively, like my opinion may be different than actual fact. So I think that that's why my project fits into the critical thinking. So I just want to give a thank you to my STEAM advisors, Ms. Copese, Ms. Cheney, and Ms. Boise, my mentor, Matt, for giving me a bunch of resources and answering all my questions and really helping me with my mentor reports, and my family and friends just for encouraging me along the way. I was a little bit not as motivated and optimistic at times, but they really helped me push through and get this done, and I'm really proud of everything that I accomplished. So, am I excited? And questions?